for being here and coming out to listen to me today. My name is Aisling Fahey, and I thought that what I'd do is tell you a little bit about how I first got into poetry, and then I will perform for you, and then you can ask me any questions you have. So it might be a bit of a ramble at the start, but you feel free to pick up on anything I say and ask me afterwards. So, I grew up in London, and when I was 13 years old, at school there was a competition called the London Teenage Poetry Slam. And what this did was to bring schools from around London together to compete in this poetry slam. And what that is a competitive element to kind of bring some excitement to poetry. So there were 2 rounds, and you had to go up. There were 8 of us in the team. I got through to the team. There were 8 people, and we performed group poems, 2 group poems. These were scored by judges, and then there was a highest scoring team, and this involved actions, it involved choral speaking, it involved all of these different elements to really bring poetry alive. And so what was amazing in that time was that I had poets coming into the school that weren't like anything I thought poets were. So they were really challenging my preconceptions of poetry, which is now in turn what I try to do when I go into schools. And also what was really important is that it was making it a real living, breathing art. There was somebody standing in front of me speaking and saying something that I connected with and related to. And so since that competition, I just didn't stop. I did not stop writing. I started going to live events which I held throughout London, so they could range from things in little pubs, above pubs, rooms, or theatres, or bigger venues, arts venues. When I was 15, I joined Barbican Young Poets, which is a programme run by Jacob Samler-Rose, who has been my poetry mentor. He was that first poet that came into the school. And that is a programme for about, say, 15 to 25-year-olds. So when I first joined, I was the youngest. I'm not the youngest now anymore, no one's impressed anymore, so it's really sad. And it would be a fortnightly session from 6 to 8 o'clock in the evening. And we would go, we would discuss poetry, we would write together, we would perform gradually towards the end of the programme. Another thing I've been involved in was Slambassadors UK, and that was more of a performance element. So you uploaded a video of yourself performing, and then you were able to be tutored again by poets and perform live. So a lot of my work has always been rooted as much in the words as bringing them alive and bringing them to stages. And then just lastly then, this year I have been Young Poet Laureate for London. And so I went off, I did my degree in English literature, and I came back and I was lucky enough through this competition to become the Young Poet Laureate for London, which is a year's position. So it's coming to an end. It started in October, and I'm handing over the week after I get back to the UK. I'm handing over my title. It's been a year full of working in the communities, different communities, ranging from I went back into my old primary school and worked with 5-year-olds, and then I was working with pensioners, having conversations about Irish pensioners, about when they came to England and all of these things. So it's been a very varied year, and it's quite amazing that I find myself in India at the end of the year. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the British Council. And I think that this is going to be a good setting. Your organisation does so many amazing things with art, and I can see the passion when you're speaking about it. So I feel like I'm with like-minded people, and it's a great atmosphere, and I like that it's dark as well. So I'm going to do some poems for you, and I really hope that you enjoy them. Reality aside, last night I became a field of unzipped tents. I found the edge and then jumped off, just to see where it led. I'm still falling in a year I'm yet to live. How can I take anybody's hand and say, come with me to this place that isn't secure, but if you fall for long enough, you'll become weightless matter. There is a freedom in releasing your accountability, but in a moment when you are outside of yourself, you remember that you will one day soon have to return to it. collect it from the back step like a dog you left out in the rain. These things we own, but don't want to anymore. What is the difference between anchors and dead weight? I found fear in a day too bright to avoid, when the sun blazed in a way I'm certain I never could. If all is strange and out of step, learn the new dance. There is a rhythm to this madness. We are hurtling toward a bright procession of possibilities. In an exhibition, I am stood by a painting of a young girl, crouched, grouchy beneath a ribbon-filled tree. In the artist's explanation, they state, this portrait considers the hopefulness of youth and subsequent disappointment. If I was with friends, we'd laugh. I am on my own, resist crying. I keep catching up with people and then letting them run into their slice of life without me. In the place where dawn breaks continuously, I am relearning the property of light. I used to go hunting for stars in my aunt's farm, come back with them between my teeth like the flesh of an exotic fruit. We don't have these in the city, I'd say, swallowing them until they settled in my belly before exploding, making me shine outwards. I confess more to strangers than to friends. I'm in a cab discussing poetry and God with the driver from Bulgaria. If I recorded my conversations with cab drivers, I think I'd be closer to my dreams. I always ask them, where is home? As they drive me to a place that is supposed to be mine. The driver from Colombia tells me he can see I am kind. And I think he is looking too far back in his mirror. Sees the girl on my shoulder with gold coins for eyes. All because I chat to you. I understand he has been a closed box for all these years. He asks me to come to Colombia with him. I say, I'm busy Monday, but wait until Tuesday and I'm there. In the time continuum 1 over from this one, he is serious and I am serious and we live a whole life. I am telling you this because I'm waiting for the stars to explode. Brace yourself. I'm going to tell you how we scuba dive through the past and find the shipwreck. Rule of thumb, believe people are good until they prove you wrong. Don't preempt everything ending. In a taster lecture, when I was in year 12, a scientist put some liquid nitrogen into a canister, and he said it would explode in 20 minutes, that we'd have forgotten about it by the time it did. We did. All right, I'll stop swallowing stars if you stop smashing light bulbs. We have written poems with this shade of dark. The ones that life pulls out of our nostrils and leaves to dry like strips of paint. I am more solid than I have ever been. This is a praise poem for mothers, a praise poem for my mother. So the title is probably my longest title ever. It starts with mother and it ends with earth. And this poem, it's kind of transformed a little bit, lots of different sections. But I was also kind of playing with this idea of the mother in literature and in poetry. It's such an archetype, you know. There's always this mother figure, mother earth or mother, you know. And even if she's absent, it means so much. So I was playing with that alongside the actual personal relationship of me and my mother. Mother, juggler of clouds, expert in holding the sky when it threatens to fall. When the gods strike their fists and the thunder heads mercilessly to the earth. There is a naivety in your belief, threaded through your body like embroidery on silk scarves. I am unpicking the gullibility you sewed into my skin. An open heart is an unguarded target. I once believed a boy until my heart became a spinning top. I apologise for trying to crush the question. Ripe berries in your mouth. I must not bite the hand that fed me. It is something that comes from learning the origin of your body. Surely you yourself have felt the dark descent. One day, I will ask which continent made your body shudder least. Think myself more like you than I imagine I am right now. It caught me by surprise when the woman at the counter said our eyes were cut from the same stone. 2 of my cousins have my face, but we do not speak. Do you sometimes forget those years we shared that same bed in the cramped bedsit we called home? I sometimes forget. The week you said you were visiting family, so my body, a thief of your love, would not clutter your mind. Did you nearly believe you had not ended up here? Was it a shock when I returned as real as ever, waiting to be fed? If I were ruler for a day, I would decree a law. Mothers, when your daughter reaches the age of 16, you must sit her down. Explain the process of how you came into yourself. You may use photographic aids, but you must also use your words. These precious stones you have a habit of storing. I wonder if they were stones or unspoken words in Virginia Woolf's pockets. Your silence is fierce and dark, without hope of light. I would like to throw you a party, buy you a red dress, give you a whole night with nothing to do in it but laugh, admire the length of your legs in such alien heels, lady in red. As you slip the right shoe off and on, you think it equivalent to the lengthening of your firstborn in those initial 6 months of no sleep and less money. Though I fear this life chose you, came towards you like a grey cloud in a barren field. There is laughter to be found, isn't there? The same laughter as when my cold feet used to brush yours in that bed. The same laughter that comes the other side of tomorrow when you realise that you are still here. And why did you think you wouldn't be silly? You have a skill of rebuilding the sky each morning, refusing to break if some days it is not as high as your God first placed it. I am mastering that strength that comes from the gut, when the rope pulling you up is cutting your hands to shreds. This life is a subtle balancing act. It takes practice, you say. I've been juggling these clouds for a lifetime. Thank you. So I grew up in London, but both of my parents are from Ireland. So they're from Westmeath, which is in the Midlands, and Galway, which is in the West. And so this year, I used to spend a lot of my summers there growing up, but as you get older, you're busier, you have less time. I was at university, I was doing things in the summer. So I found a stretch of about 3 years where I hadn't been back to Ireland, and it was the longest in a long time. And as I think happens with identity as well, when you shift to different places, it kind of changes a little bit, and what's important to you changes. So I found myself as a Londoner in a university that was outside of London, and so I really started attaching myself more to my East London identity, specifically East London. And so this year, I've done a lot of work in Ireland and with Irish people, and it felt like this reconnection and I've had some beautiful performances that were to do with W.B. Yeats and the anniversary of his birth, 150 years in June. And so I was asked by a publication to write about the Easter Rising of 1916, which is a big historical event in Ireland. And I found that although I knew about the key figures, the dates, both of my nans were born in 1916, so it had been drummed into me how important it was, I found that I didn't really know all that much else about this big event. And that's so much a part of my history, my parents' history. And so then it got me thinking about the fact that history depends, and your version and view of history depends so much upon who is telling it to you, who has written it down, and that goes across worlds, I think. So this poem actually became about my relationship to England and Ireland, their relationship to each other, and this overarching presence of history. Recovering history. My bones know a history that wasn't taught in my East London State Secondary School. Lately, it has been pulsing, frantic in its desire for discovery. This history I unknowingly locked away and lost the key to. It waits for me to unpick it. Listen close, it says. Hear the rubble of a man who could have nearly been your grandfather. Your voice is the sight of contrition, a stamp of ownership. Every time you speak, you say England took our land, and then our children, countless children, and wouldn't give them back. And their children talk with the tongue of a traitor, a whole empire in their speech. What do they know of car bombs? Enemy lines where there should never have been a border. I come back, a pilgrim for the land I could have been reared on, desperate for it to feed me what I need to make sense of myself. There are things I think I know, but cannot name. More feelings, a shift in air density or heart rate when somebody makes an off-the-cuff joke about how the Irish don't know how to stop drinking, but they know how to mourn, and I nod my head, not for half a chuckle it pains me to provide. There are bottles buried at the bottom of the garden. I know who put them there. I'll never tell. Can you see the land in my teeth? The country in my name? I think of it like a flag in a desert. Hope the wind will take pity, fly it like a kite back home. What come you here with a voice not of your own? My Irish blood rises in my freckled face to the top. I blush for what I am not, but was meant to be. If only I wrote these poems down, printed them with my name in bold, next to a photo of my freckled self taken at the height of summer. Would you call me daughter? And mean it. I think you know I am yours. I always apologise when somebody else bumps into me on the street. Thank you. I love when you get a vocal response, when you get like a whoa! In England sometimes. I have one friend specifically who will come to an event, and you know that when he's at the event he will be vocal. You will say a line and he will be like, whoa, whoa! Like it's just the noisiest audience. So that makes me happy. Thank you so much. I have somebody that says that they don't write for the applause at the end. They write for that sound in the middle that just comes like involuntarily. Alright, so sticking then with like my Irish roots, my Irish heritage. This is a little poem that is about my nan, my mum's mum. And so I wrote a whole series of poems which was to do with Irish emigration, second generation diaspora, and there was 3 sections, and the first section focused on my nan being rooted in Ireland, and stories about her. The second section was about this idea of emigration, kind of loosely based upon my mum and my dad, but mainly my mum. It was the figure of a woman. And then the third section was me as second generation Irish in London. And so this is a figure that kept on coming up was my nan, right? Because I think grandparents are like this beacon of knowledge and wisdom that you don't always tap into until it's too late. So just the one thing on Jella is like this little cream that you put on if you've got a sore mouth or something, right? So that's the only word I think that you might not know. Abscess. I prod the ulcer forming on my gum. There are parts of me that hurt when I think of them. I press my tongue into it, testing to see how much pressure I need to apply before it numbs. Mum says, rub a bit of Angela on it, check to see if there's any in the cupboard. There is none. I repeat my complaint to Nan as she washes up, and in an Irish accent, imagine. She says, bring me the holy water. I take the Virgin Mary holder for a bottle from its holder on the front door, place it into her hand. She uncaps it, pours a dab into her index finger, putting it directly into my mouth. I feel the abscess smooth under her touch. That night, I prayed for gums, for teething children, for the magic in old women's hands, for my nan's arthritic hip, for the parts of me I do not think about until another person touches them and makes them real. Thank you. There we go. Right, I'll check in with you. How are you doing? You good? Yes. Yes? Okay, good. I've got 2 more for you, is that okay? Yes? Alright, good. So, the story behind this one. So again, I'm sharing a lot of new work, and I know I said in the performance earlier as well, that doesn't really worry me. I like sharing new work. When I write it, I always feel like I want to share it now, I want to see how it goes down. And it doesn't mean that it's always finished, because this is very much in its new stages, so it might change quite a lot. But I just like sharing it, see how it goes down, so that I can sense the feel of the poem. And so I performed this for the first time in Guwahati. And so when I was in Guwahati a few days ago now, I was lucky enough to be able to do a workshop in the IIT Guwahati, right? And so there was meant to be 20 people, and then like 8 people snuck in, so there was 28. But so in that workshop, one of the activities that I got them to do was to write a definition poem. And so before we went around, and in the instructions they gave their name and their favourite word, and lots of lovely words came up. We had one that I didn't even know what it meant. It was like phantasgomia. I can't even pronounce it. Do you know what one I mean? Phantasgomia or something.
It's a little surreal, a surreal world around you.
Okay. Okay, I've got to go up and like research it. And then I also gave them 3 other words that they could use. So they didn't know why I was doing that. And then we did other things, other activities, and we came back to this. I also gave them the words light, beauty, and home to define. And lots of them chose home actually. But also as a workshop leader, if I challenge somebody, I like to say, okay, I'll do it too. You know, I'm not scared. I'll have a go. And so this was my attempt at a definition poem. So in the UK, National Poetry Day is the 8th of October, and the theme this year is light. And so I got a performance, and I thought, okay, let me try and write something new for that. And this is what came out. So yes, feel free if you want to talk to me about editing it, about lines that don't work. I'm so open, so do that. But this is light. 1. Feeling of weightlessness. That your limbs are not yours. That this worry is not yours. That you are floating just above the seat you're sat in. out. Sorry I have not let you visit recently. I am staying away from that which drags my body down, wraps well-meaning hands around my ankles and pulls me back to earth. I am sat, silent in a crowd of people. I let their noise wash over me. I don't feel compelled to say a thing. Verb. The moment after being propelled off the springboard before you reach the vaulting box. Let there be an unstoppable appreciation of flight. Let there be darkening skies over cities you're not in. The closing of eyes when darkness begins. 2. Presence which removes dark. Libby. She's my niece, she's 5 months old. I had not seen you in 2 weeks. In the time apart, you learn how to laugh. All I had to do was look at you and your cheeks were as full as apple trees in spring. You are a marvel. I want to teach you bubble writing and how to tell how old a ladybird is. I never want to stop watching you learn the things we've forgotten to appreciate along the long way. Verb. Siblings in a shared room argue whose turn it is to tiptoe out of bed and flick the switch. Let there be talk of the evenings drawing in. It will be winter soon enough. As if it is still a surprise each time it arrives. When you think someone might need to hear it, quietly mutter that quote about needing an absence of light to appreciate when it pours through blinds, hits you straight at the back of your throat as you open your mouth to cough. 1. Feeling of weightlessness. Let us linger where we do not feel time pass. Trust our bodies to tell us when and where to rest. Let us float, because we found someone with water for a back, placed our own against theirs and drifted until morning. Earth-shattering trust found in a person who is not you. 3. Absence of dark. Back on the dirt road, the 3 of us are finding answers in the stride of each other's, sensing our way from Emmy's to the old house without street lamps. Memory, all we need to guide us home. Thank you. When I started maybe writing poetry, it was about assessing things that I didn't understand and having conversations with myself and trying to set things down on paper and using it as a medium, but it was always like a friendly figure. So this year, in my romantic idea of what it was going to be like as Young Poet Laureate for London, I thought I was going to write more than I'd ever written before. I thought that the inspiration was just going to come, because of this title, when a lot of the time, sometimes having that title or that thing to live up to actually shuts you down. If no one expects anything of you, then that's absolutely fine, because they'll be happy with whatever you give. And so I found there was a period of maybe 4 or 5 months where I could not write anything. And it wasn't even that, I didn't have the time, or it wasn't that I just didn't want to, or I was busy doing other things. It was writing became loaded with this kind of sense of fear, this sense of importance and responsibility. So what is the role of a poet? What is the role? Who are you speaking for? And what are you saying? And does it matter? And who wants to hear what you have to say? Because writing is a brave act, and I think I underestimated how brave it is to write and then to share as well, because it's always been something I've done from a young age. So I found this period of time where it was like my tongue had been cut off, and this was the first poem that I wrote after that period of silence. So I was like, yay! And I'll end here, and then questions. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for listening. When you grow tired of holding an ache that has long outgrown your strength, time will teach you how to know that this too like everything other than these words, will fade. We'll find new earth to stir up dust in. When you are old, you will hold these aches. Troublesome children you cannot help but love. Return from the night they snuck out into decades before. Decisions turn back on themselves. Roads are only so long, and this is not how it ends. All this too will pass, and it passes whilst you are thinking, and it is passing as you think of it, even as you pull the sheets not washed in weeks over your wilting body. Tell me my mouth will not be arid land, unwatered soil, desert dust for all the years to come. Tell me there are flowers left to grow, preparing to sprout from my throat like a new tongue, colourful and seeking rain. You have come back to yourself. You remember how to eat. It's not a mechanical must. Your hands put themselves together. In prayer or poise, that is not the point. One fills the other. With the same tingle as when you touch a face you thought would never be your painting to look at this closely. Your heart says, I tried to get in through your ears, but you weren't listening. You boarded up all openings. Your mouth says, I wondered when the famine would end. Stomach says, so easy to detach mind from body in these hectic hours that still feel hollow as empty wells. Eyes say, there was always a person waiting for you at the other end of the forest. And though you thought it was the Amazon, it was the hallway in your first house, barely wider than your hips, and we knew that you would not shelter long under this canopy of trees. Knowing anxiety in a new way, a persistent lover whom you let clamber over your sweaty heartbeats. You spot the difference between empathy and sympathy. The analogy of shoes is not enough. You are in somebody else's skin, even though you know it is your own. The woman, claustrophobic in her own body. Did you ever hear anything as sad? As the woman who made bowling pins of her dreams, a bowling ball of her body. We have let the silence eat us, cut ourselves out of its stomach. Do not think that I am joking when I say words are food and fire and light. How to not make yourself feel trivial when you realise how much needs to be said by a mouth that is not your own. Come back to this truth. The poem you are most scared to read when there is someone you know in the audience. If the best poem you are yet to write is a song you do not know, blasting from a passing car window, then how far would you travel by foot to find it? If your body is the passing car, if it was bought at auction and the owner wants to sell again, if you have done too many miles, and if you didn't plan a route home, then this is the poem that says here is not home. But here is what you make of it. Here, come in, take a seat and tell me why you've come, hungry and not whole. When do you expect to be complete? What will you do when you're all smooth edges? And full moons, people do not have to crane their necks to see. You, standing in the flat after painting, all furniture moved, air, breath and echo, we fill ourselves up. But there's still just enough space for you, love. Come close, come quick. I have not been keeping an eye on this time. It may be night soon. Thank you so much. Thank you. So this again came from the selection that I was talking to you about like the immigration section. And again, there's a figure of my nan in there, and there's a figure of my mum in there. So we'll finish with this one. Prayer. Give me something to believe in, more permanent than a wound. I light candles in cold churches, never there when the flames burn out. But something inside me knows it is dark again. My mother, the Irish immigrant, places the unleavened host into the mouth of Patrick, a Caribbean immigrant whose grandson was in my class. She is slowly becoming her mother, head bowed in prayer, Sunday mornings heaving in her chest all the week through. Nan would get to church 15 minutes before service started, sit in the same seat. She was made of Bible stories, ones I'd learned in Sunday school but hadn't yet registered the importance of. One Maundy Thursday, I sat beside her, scared the priest would bend with a basin, waiting for my dirty feet, a sinner's offering. She does not pray out loud. Sometimes I catch mutters breaking from her lips, tiny waves on a seaside shore. Tell me what it is you pray for, Nana. So fiercely your tongue becomes fire. I want to feel the heat of a faith like yours. Thank you. That really is